What would you do if you had only 7 days left? Before losing everything you ever loved, Catherine Matthews could barely breathe as she stood in the dusty yard of her ranch outside Silver Creek. The Arizona sun burned overhead, but all she felt was cold dread. She held the foreclosure notice in her trembling hands, her father's debt spelled out in harsh black ink. She had 7 days to pay. 7 days before the only home she had ever known was taken and sold to the highest bidder. 7 days before she would be thrown into the world with nothing. The banker, Mr. Holloway, had not even tried to hide his satisfaction. He had given her a thin smile when he delivered the notice, a smile that told her he had been waiting for this moment. He had wanted her land for years. Now he would get it. Catherine sank onto the porch steps, staring across the yard. Everything looked tired. The fences sagged. The main barn roof dipped in the middle. The corral stood empty where once a dozen horses would have been. Her father had built this place with his own hands, but drought and illness had taken everything from him before taking his life 3 months ago. She was only 23, and alone. Alone in a way that made the wind feel louder and the world feel bigger than she could carry. "Miss Catherine?" The gentle voice pulled her from her thoughts. Mrs. Abernathy, their elderly neighbor, walked toward her holding a basket of warm bread and preserves. Her eyes were full of worry when she saw Catherine's face. "What happened, child?" Catherine tried to speak, but her voice cracked. She handed over the foreclosure notice instead. Mrs. Abernathy read it, her own lips tightening with anger. "That weasel Holloway," she muttered. "He's been circling your land like a hungry buzzard ever since your daddy fell sick." "Why?" Catherine whispered. "The ranch is falling apart." Mrs. Abernathy hesitated, then said, "People say there might be silver in the hills behind your property." Holloway has heard the same whispers. Catherine's breath caught. Silver? But father never. He didn't believe in mining, dear, but others might. The idea sparked for only a second before fading. What good was a rumor when she had no money, no workers, and barely enough food to last the week? As the older woman left, Catherine felt the truth settle deep into her bones. There was no saving this place. Not alone. The next morning she was mending a broken fence in the north pasture when she heard hoofbeats approaching. Her hand went to the small revolver tucked in her waistband. She had learned early that a lone woman on a ranch had to be ready. A tall rider approached on a chestnut stallion. Dust covered both man and horse, and his hat shaded most of his face, but Catherine could see the broad shoulders, the strong posture, and the watchful eyes of a man used to traveling dangerous roads. "Morning, ma'am," he called. "Name's Owen Blackwood. I'm traveling through and looking for water for my horse, maybe a bit of work if you need an extra hand." Catherine studied him carefully. He looked tired but capable, rough but not unkind. There was a steadiness in his voice that eased some part of her fear. "There's a stream past the cottonwoods," she said. "You're welcome to water your horse, but I can't offer work. I can't pay anyone." He nodded in understanding, wasn't asking for pay, just trying to be useful. He dismounted and walked his horse toward the stream. Catherine tried to return to her fence, but her eyes kept drifting toward him. Travelers were not rare in the territory, but something about this one felt different. He had the quiet way of a man who had seen too much, yet still chose gentleness when he could. When he returned, he nodded toward the fence. "Mind if I take a look? Could help you fix it in half the time." "I can manage," she said quickly, but her hands were sore, her shoulders aching, and the fence was winning the fight. He showed her how to brace the wood properly, and she had to admit his method was better. They worked side by side in silence for a long while. Eventually she asked, "Where are you headed?" "Nowhere in particular," he said. "Texas, Colorado, Wyoming, worked cattle, prospected a little, broke horses, just kept moving." "It's been 13 years since the war," she said softly. His eyes flicked to hers. Some men carry the war longer than it lasted. They finished the fence quickly, and when they walked back toward the house, Owen paused as he looked around the property. "This ranch could be something strong again," he said quietly. "Just needs hands and time." She swallowed hard. "I don't have either." He looked at her more carefully then, seeing what she had not said. Something's wrong. She did not want to tell him, but somehow the words spilled out. The foreclosure, the debt, the 7 days, Holloway, and the impossible weight on her shoulders. Owen listened without interrupting, his face unreadable. When she finished, he said only, "I'm sorry, Catherine. That's a heavy burden for anyone alone." He offered to stay a few days. No pay, no conditions, just help. She hesitated before agreeing. But by the end of that first day, Owen had repaired a porch board she had been tripping over for months. By the second, he had fixed the well. By the third, he had broken the wild stallion her father had never finished training. Each night, they sat on the porch as the sun set, the silence between them easy and warm. She told him about her father. He told her he carried losses too heavy to set down. On the fourth evening, as the sky turned deep orange, Catherine felt something strange, hope, something she had not felt in months. But hope was dangerous, and on the seventh day, none of it would matter. When she finally told him the foreclosure was only 3 days away, Owen was silent for a long time. Too long. Then he looked at her with steady eyes and said the words that would change her life. "Catherine, I have a proposition, not charity, a partnership. A marriage of convenience." Her heart stopped. "You're offering marriage?" "Why?" "Because together," he said, "we might just save this place." She stared at him, torn between disbelief and fear. "Think on it," he said softly. "No pressure, no expectations, just a choice. A choice that might save everything, or break her heart in ways she wasn't ready for." Catherine barely slept that night. Owen's offer echoed in her mind long after the lamps went out. Marriage. To a man she had known for less than a week. A man who slept in her barn, worked from sunrise to sunset without complaint, and looked at her with quiet respect she had almost forgotten existed. It was madness, but so was losing the ranch, losing her father's legacy, losing the last piece of her family. By morning, she had made her choice. She found Owen repairing a saddle on the porch, his large hands moving with slow, careful grace. He looked up when he heard her steps. "Yes," she said simply. He set the saddle aside and stood. "You're sure?" Quote. "As sure as I can be," she answered, steadying her voice. "But I have conditions. The ranch stays in both our names, all decisions are shared, and anything beyond partnership happens only when I say so." Owen nodded without hesitation. "Agreed, all of it." Quote. Another man might have pushed, might have assumed, but Owen only offered what she asked for, nothing more. That morning, they rode into Silver Creek. The town felt smaller than ever, every face familiar and curious as they dismounted in front of the justice's office. Judge Wilson married them in less than 5 minutes. Mrs. Abernathy and the shopkeeper signed as witnesses. "May you find happiness," the judge said with a kind smile. Catherine wasn't sure what she felt as Owen placed the ring on her finger. Fear, relief, hope, all tangled together. They stood close, not touching, but sharing the strange weight of what they had just done. Mrs. Abernathy hugged her tight. "It doesn't matter how it started, dear. Some marriages grow into exactly what they're meant to be." Catherine wasn't so sure, but she nodded anyway. Their next stop was the bank. Mr. Holloway looked like he'd swallowed a nail when they walked in together. "Mrs. Matthews," he began. "Mrs. Blackwood," Owen corrected calmly. Holloway's eyes flickered with irritation. "Yes. Well, as I was saying, unless you have the full payment." "I have a counteroffer," Owen cut in, placing his money on the desk, "a significant payment toward the principal. And you'll extend the loan terms." Holloway sputtered, "Absolutely not. The foreclosure is final." "Unless," Owen said softly, leaning in, "your paperwork has errors." Holloway froze. "I'd be interested to see whether you charged fair interest to a grieving daughter," Owen continued. "And I imagine the community would be interested too." Silence fell heavy. Holloway finally muttered, "Fine, I'll restructure the loan. 6 months. But this is highly irregular." "So was your eagerness to take this land," Owen replied. An hour later, they rode away with a new agreement. Catherine could hardly believe it. "You used all your savings," she whispered. He shrugged lightly. "If there's silver in those hills, it's a good investment. And if there isn't, we rebuild the ranch the slow way. You risked everything for me." "For us," he corrected gently. They fell into a rhythm after that. Mornings filled with repairs and cattle work. Evenings marked by planning and quiet conversation. Owen never pushed, never crossed the line she had drawn. He slept in the barn without complaint. He treated her like a partner, not a possession. And bit by bit, the ranch began to come alive again. 3 weeks later, Owen discovered a promising vein of silver in a narrow ravine behind the property. Not enough to make them rich, but enough to give them a chance. Enough to change everything. They hired the Perkins brothers, began mining small amounts, bought a few hardy cattle to rebuild the herd. Word spread through Silver Creek. The once dying ranch was waking up. The bankers' plans were failing, but something else was happening too, between Catherine and Owen. It started in small ways. The way his eyes softened when she walked into a room. The way he removed his hat when he spoke to her. The way her heart warmed when she saw him work, sweat streaking down his temples, determination in every strong line of his body. She tried to ignore it. Tried not to feel anything she wasn't ready for. But one evening, as they studied maps under the lantern light, their hands brushed. A small moment. Barely a touch. Yet Catherine felt it like a spark. Owen seemed to feel it too, because he stopped speaking. His breath hitched just slightly. He looked at her with a question in his eyes. A question neither of them dared answer. Not yet. Then came the invitation from Mabel Turner, the harvest dance. The entire town wanted to see them together. The newlyweds, the couple who married in a hurry. The pair surrounded by whispers. The night of the dance, Catherine felt nervous in ways she didn't understand. She wore her best blue dress. When she stepped out, Owen stood waiting in his clean shirt and combed hair. He stared at her, silent for a long moment. "You look beautiful," he said, voice low. Her breath hitched. "Thank you, and you look very handsome." They rode into town. They entered the hall, every eye turned toward them. Owen offered his arm. "Ready?" "Together," she said, slipping her hand into the crook of his elbow. People were kind, curious, full of questions. Owen charmed them all without trying. When the music began, he asked her to dance. His hand settled at her waist, gentle but firm. Their steps matched easily, as if they had been dancing together all their lives. "You didn't tell me you could dance," she murmured. "There's a lot you don't know about me yet," he replied, "but we have time." She looked up at him, and for the first time, she truly believed it. Later, other women pulled her aside. "Your husband looks at you like you're the only person in the room," Mrs. Peterson whispered. "If you ask me, that man is smitten." Catherine's heart thudded painfully. When they returned home that night, Owen helped her down from her horse. His hands lingered on her waist. She thanked him for pretending so well. He stepped closer, his voice rough. "Who says I was pretending?" She froze. As he turned to walk toward the barn, Catherine found her courage. "Owen," she called softly, "you don't have to sleep in the barn tonight." He stopped, turned, walked back to her slowly. "Catherine," he said, voice deep and steady, "if you're asking me to come inside, then I need you to be sure, because once I cross that line, I won't be able to go back to being just a partner on paper." Her heart pounded. "I'm sure," she whispered. "Come inside. Stay with me." He reached out, cupped her cheek with a tenderness that made her knees weaken. "Then I'm yours," he murmured. "For real this time." And when she rose on her toes and kissed him, he wrapped his arms around her as if he had been waiting his whole life for that moment. The moment Catherine kissed Owen, the world around them seemed to fall quiet. The dry wind, the distant cattle, even the creaking porch boards, all faded until there was only the two of them, holding on as if something long buried had finally risen to the surface. Owen pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. His voice was low and warm. "I've wanted to do that since the first week I knew you." Her breath caught. "What took you so long?" "I was waiting," he whispered, "waiting for you to want me too." She didn't answer with words. She simply took his hand, guided him toward the house, and closed the door behind them. That night, everything changed. Their marriage began with a bargain, but now it became something real, something tender and strong, something that made both of them feel whole again. Days turned into weeks, and the ranch thrived under their shared work. The small silver vein Owen found brought in enough money to pay the restructured loan and start building a stronger herd. The Perkins brothers worked the mine during the mornings and helped on the ranch in the afternoons. For the first time in a long time, laughter returned to the Blackwood home. Catherine and Owen fell into a life that felt as natural as breathing. They ate together, worked side by side, and in the quiet hours of the night held each other close. What had once been an arrangement had turned into love, pure and simple. Then came the news that changed everything again. Catherine suspected before she was sure. She felt it first in small changes, the tiredness, the flutter of nerves, the tug in her spirit. A trip to town confirmed it. "Owen," she said later that afternoon, walking toward him as he mended a fence. Her voice was soft but trembling with emotion. "We're going to have a baby." For a moment, he didn't move. He just stared at her, eyes wide. Then a slow, stunned smile spread across his face. He dropped his tools, crossed the yard in 3 strides, and lifted her off the ground in his arms. "A baby?" he said, almost breathless. "Our baby." Quote. She laughed as he spun her gently. "Yes, in the fall." He set her down carefully, hands resting on her waist. "Catherine, that's the best news I've ever heard." From that moment on, Owen watched over her with a tenderness she'd never known. He made her rest when she pushed too hard. He cooked for her when she felt tired. And at night, he lay with his arm around her, whispering things he had never said aloud before. Fears, dreams, hopes he hadn't dared to share with anyone. As months passed, the ranch grew stronger. So did their family. Late one crisp October morning, after a long night of labor, their son arrived. Oliver James Blackwood, tiny, perfect, and loud enough to fill the whole room with his first cry. Owen held him with hands that usually knew only work, rough and steady. But in that moment, they trembled. "He's perfect," he whispered. Catherine leaned against him, exhausted but glowing with love. "He has your eyes." "And your stubbornness," Owen said with a grin as the baby gripped his finger. Winter came, quiet and steady. The family settled into a warm, gentle rhythm. Owen carved a beautiful wooden cradle for Oliver, each detail made with care. Catherine found herself smiling every time she saw father and son together. Their love felt like a shelter she had never known she needed. Spring arrived with new calves and new hope. Catherine grew stronger with each passing day, and Owen never stopped watching her as if she was the most precious thing in his world. 5 years passed. Then 10. The Blackwood Ranch grew into one of the strongest cattle operations in the territory. The silver mine eventually ran dry, but by then they didn't need it. Their herd had doubled, then tripled. They added new barns, new corrals, new pastures. The small house her father built became a warm, lively home. Their son Oliver grew tall and bright-eyed like his father. Then came twin daughters, Anne and Elizabeth, full of energy and mischief. The ranch echoed with laughter every day. Catherine often watched Owen teaching the children to ride, rope, and respect the land. His patience never wavered, his pride never dimmed, and every night he returned to her side, slipping an arm around her, as if grateful she chose him. Each morning they woke together. One warm evening as the sun set behind the hills, Catherine stood on the porch and watched Owen and the children practicing in the corral. Oliver roped a post cleanly, and the twins cheered at the top of their voices. "Mama, did you see?" Oliver called. "I did," she answered, smiling as Owen ruffled the boy's hair. Everything she had feared losing all those years ago, her home, her future, her hope, had returned tenfold. Later that night, When the children were asleep, Catherine and Owen sat in their usual place on the porch. The sun dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky painted in soft pinks and golds. "You ever think about it?" she asked quietly. "What would have happened if you hadn't stopped here that day?" Owen slid his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "Sometimes," he said, "but I don't like to, because I know where I belong, with you." She turned to look at him, her heart swelling just like it had the first night he kissed her. "No regrets?" she teased gently. "Even though you married a stranger who couldn't pay her debts?" He laughed softly, brushing his thumb along her cheek. "The only debt I've ever had," he murmured, "is to thank the stars for bringing me to your door." Her chest tightened at the tenderness in his voice. "I love you, Owen Blackwood," she said, leaning into him. He kissed the top of her head, his voice warm and sure. "And I love you, Catherine Blackwood, yesterday, today, and all the days to come." The ranch lights glowed, the wind whispered through the grass, and the land they had saved together stretched wide and golden beneath the moon. Their love had started as a last hope. But it became a life, a home, a future, a true partnership, built slowly, with steady hands and open hearts, and it lasted forever.